India approves a new semiconductor program, offers more than $13 billion in financial assistance to accelerate local chip production. The Semicon 2.0 initiative expands on a drive which was launched 5 years ago. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hailed the program's announcement. Donald Trump lashes out at the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. He is angry over the suspension of the use of traffic stops after 2 fatal shootings in less than a week. A Colombian man was shot dead in Maine on Monday, and a Mexican man was killed in Texas last week. Israel Supreme Court suspends a contentious law which was passed just a day prior. The law blocked the arrest of Jewish ultra-Orthodox men who refused military service. On Tuesday, the Israeli parliament approved the legislation. The move drew flack from the opposition as the army struggles with a shortage of personnel. Power restored across Cuba after the third nationwide outage in less than 10 days. The latest blackout left nearly 10 million people without power. The Communist Island's electricity crisis has worsened after Donald Trump cut off its oil supplies in January. And Joe Biden announces his memoir. The former US president also said that his cancer treatment was going well. Biden's presidential memoir is called Promise Me, America. The publication date has been set for the 17th of November this year. There's an old African proverb: when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. In West Asia, the elephants are America and Iran, and the grass, the Gulf states. Air defense systems across several Gulf states, including the United Arab Emirates and Jordan, have been activated. This after Iran launched a wave of attacks at America's military installations in the Gulf. Iranian attacks followed renewed US bombardments in Iran for a 4th straight day today. According to the US military, the latest strikes aimed at degrading Iranian capabilities to attack commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran later reported that the southern port city of Bushehr, which is home to the country's only civilian nuclear plant, was hit. Several Iranian military personnel in the southeast part of the country were killed. In retaliation, Iran continued with its attacks on Gulf states. A US 5th Fleet in Bahrain was attacked. Jordan's military said it downed 3 ballistic missiles from Tehran. Kuwait and Bahrain's military too intercepted several aerial barrages. Now, at the heart of the recent flare-up is the Strait of Hormuz. Washington reimposed its blockade of Iranian ports as Tehran announced the critical waterway closed until US ends its act of aggression. But more on this in our next story. For now, let's focus on Trump. He has now threatened to attack Iran's energy targets, power plants, bridges.
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets. But we're going to hit them very hard tonight. We're going to hit them hard tomorrow night. We're going to hit it very hard the night after. And then next week, it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
He also raised the possibility of a ground campaign, but he was vague about the specifics. For months, he had openly threatened to take Iran's Kharg Island. It's Iran's main oil export terminal. Saying you'll take an island is the easy part. Actually putting troops ashore is where reality starts asking the difficult questions. Amphibious invasions aren't just risky. They're among the hardest military operations ever attempted. There are only so many beaches suitable for a landing, which means Iranian forces know exactly where to prepare. They can mine the approach, block landing routes, and turned the shoreline into a firing range with drones, artillery, mortars, and infantry. The US president now has a new target, Pickaxe Mountain. It's a heavily fortified nuclear complex in Iran. In Iran, it is called the Koe-Kolan Gazla. It is located near Iran's Natanz nuclear complex. It lies within Iran's Zagros mountain range, a geologically active region made up largely of folded limestone and sedimentary rock. And here's why that is important. Beneath its rock lies what Western intelligence believes is one of Iran's most hardened nuclear facilities. Officially, Tehran says it's meant for assembling advanced centrifuges. Unofficially, though, many analysts see it as a vault that could one day house uranium enrichment or even more secretive nuclear activities. Pickaxe Mountain escaped both the June 2025 operation, Midnight Hammer Strikes, and subsequent US-Israeli military operations this year. From space, this mountain appears anything but dormant. Heavy equipment continues to move Earth. Tunnel entrances are growing stronger. Fresh excavation scars spread across the landscape. To Western intelligence, the mountain isn't being abandoned, it's being prepared. And that's why Pickaxe Mountain matters. Even if the complex isn't fully operational today, experts warn that preserving it could hand Iran a protected launch pad to rebuild critical parts of its nuclear program in the years ahead. But let's be honest here. We're talking about Trump. And Mr. Dealmaker has a habit of flipping. Let me give you 4 examples. First, his U-turn on the Hormuz toll. On Monday, Trump decided the US needed a side hustle. It sounded like Monopoly, World Edition. America becomes the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz and charges every cargo ship a 20% toll.
And we're not going to put it up. Yeah, I want to be reimbursed because we're protecting a very rich portion of the world. We're spending money. And so what we've done is we are going to be reimbursed for protection.
Turns out, actually pulling it off would have required a massive military commitment lasting years. And right on cue, less than 24 hours later, Trump walked it back. According to a CNN report, his advisors scrambled to talk him out of this idea.
And I like that, actually, because I don't think anybody should be able to charge a fee for the strait or for any other strait relationship in terms of other sections of the world. I don't think anybody should be really in that position. But we were doing it as a reimbursement. The Gulf states are going to invest a tremendous amount of money into the United States, and that was very satisfactory to me.
Second, his claim that the war will be short. 4 to 5 weeks is what he predicted. But the conflict has now been going on for 4.5 months with no end in sight. Third, Trump's belief that Iranian leaders are rational.
And we're dealing with people that I think are very rational people. I mean, they were nice to deal with. They were strong people, smart people. I think actually they're smarter than the first and second group, but they're not radicalized.
After the United States and Iran struck a memorandum last month, Trump and US Vice President J.D. Vance seemed convinced Tehran had suddenly discovered the joys of cooperation. Once the ceasefire collapsed, the warm words vanished.
I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. You know what is? They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over.
That's quite a journey from handshake diplomacy to name-calling speedrun, and finally, his repeated claims of Iran being desperate for a deal. He said it exactly 30 times. Either Tehran is begging, desperate, or dying to make a deal.
Deals, do you? But you're going to find out pretty soon. I think it'll be done. They want to sign. They have very little left, and they want to make a deal so badly. They called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so badly. I just don't know if they're worthy of making a deal.
But the events of the past few months have shown us the opposite. For 3 months, Tehran has done something strange for a country supposedly on its knees. It negotiated, and it negotiated hard, demanded concessions, and rejected terms it didn't like. There's a pattern in America's wars. Iraq gave the world one of the greatest examples of wartime optimism. Dick Cheney's prediction that American troops would be greeted as liberators. Reality, however, tells us something very different. That quote became a lasting reminder of what happens when leaders confuse certainty with understanding and assume a war will follow the version they had imagined. The Trump administration's Iran war record has featured its own collection of similar moments. For 4.5 months, Trump and his officials have repeatedly offered confident forecasts, only to watch events move in a very different direction. It often appears that the administration is discovering the complexities of the conflict at the same time as all of us. The issue is not simply that predictions can be wrong. Wars are unpredictable. The problem is when confidence becomes a substitute for comprehension.